Hi, this is Nora with Nourish with Nora. I'm so excited today to have with me one of my favorite humans on the planet, Dr. Michael Goran, who is a renowned researcher at USC, an established author of Sugarproof, which I have on my shelf right now, and a true visionary and guide. He's also joining Eat Real's new medical advisory board, where I'm the CEO, and he's guiding our nonprofit to help schools become the center of health in their communities. And I'm just so happy to have you here. Thank you. So with just my first question is, why should parents be concerned right now? You've been doing research for 35 years looking at the state of health in this country and the state of health of our children. What are you seeing, and should parents be worried? It feels like the state of our children's health is getting worse. Is it? Like, could you share more about what you're seeing and why parents should care?
Yeah, thanks, Nora. Yeah, I think it is. I think we're seeing continuing rises and spreading of epidemics related to obesity, chronic diseases like type 2 diabetes, new diseases like non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, which wasn't even a problem 10 years ago, all continuing to rise in children. And those are just the physical outcomes. And there's other issues at hand too in terms of mental health, cognitive development, memory, performance, focus in school, all not doing very well, and all can be tied to nutrition. And all of those outcomes are getting worse, but they're all preventable with better nutrition.
What happens when a kid has prediabetes or fatty liver disease? Talk to me about how that impacts their growth and development and how that impacts their family.
Well, both would be slightly different. So, type 2 diabetes or prediabetes and resulting in type 2 diabetes. I mean, we're not, the real problem is these are not obvious diseases. They're what I would call hidden disease or hidden condition. So you might not even know your child was having prediabetes or at risk for fatty liver disease until it became too late, 10 or 20 years later. And this has always been a limitation with doing this type of research in children, in that, yes, we do see type 2 diabetes and fatty liver happening, but for the most part, it's a slowly evolving chronic condition.
Mm.
And by the time we see it and get to it, it might be too late.
What are some early warning signs that parents can look for?
Really, it's weight gain. Excess weight gain would be common, but not exclusive. But that would be a common denominator for both type 2 diabetes and fatty liver disease.
Because that's visibly happening to the child, but what you're most concerned with is what's happening with their metabolism and the actual fat accumulation around their internal organs, right?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, it's like your car is not working very well, but you can't really figure out what's happening until you open the bonnet and look in the engine in a bit more detail and see what's happening. So it's all to do with even not just how much we weigh or how much our kids weigh, but where they're depositing excess fat tissue. And sometimes that can happen inside the organ, so you can't see it from the outside. And that's exactly what's happening in fatty liver disease. It's fat buildup inside the organ.
And what happens to that car down the line when that child is 20, 30, 40? How does type 2 diabetes and fatty liver disease start to impact a child later in life?
Well, eventually those will result in organ failure. So in the case of fatty liver disease, eventually down the road, your car is driving a little less efficiently, things are not sounding right, and then all of a sudden your car breaks down and you need a new engine. In this case, you need a new liver. And liver transplant is the eventual outcome, and that problem is rising. The need for a liver transplant or liver failure is the end result. And, that's obviously a terrible situation to be in and entirely preventable.
Yeah, and I'm told that liver cirrhosis is one of the most painful deaths that there is.
Yeah, I'm sure it's I'm sure it's a very difficult situation to deal with.
So you call these diseases in kids nutrition-related diseases, which I really appreciate that. At Eat Real, where I'm the CEO, we've been calling these diseases and the rise of these diseases in children, which used to happen in adulthood, ultra-processed food-related diseases. When you look at nutrition as driving, what types of foods are driving this kind of car breakdown, this metabolism breakdown in children?
Yeah, I mean, nutrition is not the only thing, but I think it's the predominant factor. We could talk about air quality and contaminants in the environment.
Yeah.
Those are definitely factors as well.
Actions, absolutely.
Yeah, but nutrition is probably one of the major driving factors. And really, I mean, it's not too far to talk about, not too far from the truth to talk about ultra processed foods as being the main factor. Our research has been focused mainly on dietary sugars, some on sweeteners, but those are added sugars are present in over 70% of ultra processed foods. So I think really that is a good place to a good way to talk about the general issue without getting into the nitty gritty details of individual diets. It's really been a big shift in our food environment towards more ultra processed, easily obtainable foods.
And 67% of kids' calories are ultra processed calories, and then 70% of those products, one of the key ingredients then is sugar. So I know that your book Sugarproof talks a lot about that as a key driving force within ultra processed food that then is causing these nutrition related diseases.
Absolutely, yeah.
When looking at sugar, like what do you think are talk to me about what are the worst forms, like what are the worst products that you really encourage families to steer away from? We'll keep using car analogies. So
Yeah, well, I guess it would be the analogy would be like putting the wrong type of fuel
fuel.
in your tank.
Yeah.
So which eventually will cause the engine to break. But yeah, so we're focused on added sugars and liquid sugars. I think those would be the two main issues. Liquid sugars being sodas, but not just soda, also juice,
Mm-hmm.
fruit juice, which sounds like a very healthy thing to drink, is a lot of what we call free sugar, sugar liberated from the whole fruit and consumed in liquid form is very problematic.
Where there isn't fiber to slow the absorption, where the fiber's been broken down, and then the sugar,
Exactly.
and then it
Yeah.
makes the kid.
And juice from fruit is predominantly fructose as well. So there's more fructose in fruit juice than in high fructose corn syrup Coca-Cola. So,
I think, yeah, when I gave up orange juice, my life started to shift. I grew up on that stuff being from Minnesota. Like, we had the standard American breakfast. And so when I said I loved orange juice growing up, but I realized it was just like, it was spiking me. And there was a reason I was getting a rush from it. And, and it's my breakup with orange juice was one of probably the most powerful health shifts that I've made personally.
Oh, that's great. I think parents need to think about that. But I mean, there's fundamental problems in the food environment which are kind of promoting juice as a healthy drink and not categorizing the sugars in there as added sugars.
Right. And so that goes into like transparency around labeling and consistency around labeling. And it's been made to be really, really confusing. So how do we structurally make changes to regulations so that it's clearer to parents about added and free sugars and the 262 plus names of sugar? And then how do we also change the food environment so those healthy options are the easy option and the accessible option? And that's why I love the work that we do at Eat Real, where we change the school food environment and make it so that kids have access and can reduce sugar. And we look at things like making swaps from juice or flavored yogurt to regular yogurt, etc. So, and I know you've been one of our major advisors there for that, and I'm really excited to do more research with you too, and show the data even more. Speaking of data, I know that you've done a ton of research, and so and there are two kind of major studies that I just can't stop nerding out on that you've been working on. Could you talk a little bit about one, the data around increased sugar consumption and brain size? And I know it's an adult brain size, but could you share a little bit about that kind of research that you've discussed?
Yeah, this was not our study, but it was a published study some years ago from one of the largest cohort studies in the US, the Framingham Heart Study, that's been tracking a large number of adults in Framingham, Massachusetts. And there was a paper published a couple of years ago where they had measured brain structure and brain volume with MRI. And what they found was that brain volume was lower in adults who were consuming high amounts of sugary beverages over their lifetime.
The
So
brain size
that's
were smaller.
smaller
And
brain size.
the more sugary beverages that an adult consume, the smaller their brain size.
Yeah. And the bigger the risk for stroke and Alzheimer's disease, two of the major brain related diseases.
And that research hasn't been done on kids. I don't know, right? I mean, I don't know how it hasn't been done, because if it's impacting adults grown brain sizes, then how is it impacting developing brains and their functioning? So, but there hasn't been research. That's a research gap, correct?
We're doing the research now, so we're collecting data to look at that right now, and should have more information on that in the coming year or two. It's a slow process. We've been following a cohort of babies since they were born, and we've been observing or measuring what exactly they've been consuming, including breast milk, formula,
Mhm.
transition to sodas and juices and all that. And then we're actually measuring their brain, not just their volume, but their brain function and brain activity. There's certainly studies on cognitive
Mhm.
outcomes like learning and memory, which have been shown to be positively related to higher levels of consumption of sugary beverages. So we do know that from several studies that
Share that a little
children,
more. Share about sugar and the impact on cognitive functioning in
yeah,
children.
so studies showing that children who consume high amounts of sugary beverages have lower test scores, for example, on academic performance and lower performance on memory tests, for example.
So the more sugar a kid eats and consumes, the lower the test scores and the worse their memory is.
That's right.
Wow. At a time where we're trying to get them to learn and become smarter and stronger. Wow. Yeah.
Yeah, we're not doing them justice in terms of their nutritional profile. Sugar definitely has an impact on brain development. We know that from animal studies, cohort studies, in babies that have been followed since birth. We know there are impacts on the brain.
What kind of impacts have you seen from those studies?
Well, some of them are hard to translate from animals, and you can't do these studies in humans, but we know that, for example, we see poorer performance on memory due to inflammation in the brain.
Mm,
So you can only do that by like dissecting the brain and looking
right.
for areas of inflammation, but those studies have been done in animal models.
Wow. And so I want to talk, I have two young kids, and my journey really started when I became pregnant, and they said my sugar levels were slightly high. And I said, impossible. I had an organic smoothie, and they said, did it have protein in it? And I realized I was eating, like, again, a free sugar, which I didn't really know about. And then thankfully, it was a quick study. I didn't get gestational diabetes. I went really deep on nutrition, and I learned to fuel myself differently. Even though I was an ultra runner and athlete, I was
Hmm.
very active and felt like I knew how to fuel, and I really didn't. And so I had to do a reset for myself
Hmm.
quickly. And thankfully, it was very early in my pregnancy, and I was able to really focus on nutrition during pregnancy. But I've been nerding out, as I do late at night, on the rise of gestational diabetes, and it's soaring across our, like, it's significantly upticking across states, across the country. Could you talk a little bit about gestational diabetes and then juvenile diabetes, but like especially for the impact for pregnant people, and Could you talk about the impact for pregnancy and babies and sugar?
Yeah, we know there's definitely a link between both gestational weight gain, excess excess weight gain during pregnancy, and gestational diabetes. Both are separately related to poor outcomes in the infant, including greater risk for obesity in the infant and the growing child, and greater risk of transmission of diabetes to the infant. So those factors are affecting not just the mom, but the future generation of offspring. So it's kind of a terrible vicious cycle that's happening,
Yeah.
whereby if mothers are gaining too much weight or getting diabetes during pregnancy, that can promote the development in the offspring.
And then you've also been researching, I know, baby formula. So, and could you talk about the added sugar and corn syrup and the problems with that in our baby formula supply?
Yeah, my favorite topic these days. And it's something that I just don't understand, but why this has happened exactly. But the evidence is pretty clear that we need to do something about it, and I hope we can. But the issue is that over half of all infant formula sold in the US is not made with lactose, it's made with corn syrup, um, which is really shocking to me. Formula is critically important. Many mothers are unable to breastfeed and are dependent on the use of formula. And so formula should simulate what's in breast milk, and the carbohydrate energy source in breast milk is lactose. Lactose is a disaccharide of glucose joined to galactose.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Not a sweetener, not a
yeah,
GMO modified, sprayed with glyphosate likely, and then turned into a sweetener
yeah.
killer.
So, but if you look at one in two of all formula products, there's no lactose in there. It's made with corn syrup or corn-based products. And we've published research to show how this is affecting children early in life, infants, gut microbiome, increased risk for obesity. And we're doing research now. I can't share with you too much details because we haven't published this yet, but I've seen the data and it's shocking. Because we've put glucose monitors on babies to look at how babies regulate their blood glucose levels on breast milk
Oh,
versus formula. And if you think about it, corn syrup is just glucose. So I said how lactose is glucose connected to galactose. Corn syrup is just all glucose. So it's like a recipe for spiraling blood glucose out of control. And that's what we're seeing in these babies who are fed formula with corn syrup formula.
which is 50% of the babies who depend on baby formula for nourishment in our country.
Yeah. Under the banner of usually sold under the label of sensitive formula or for fussy
That's like
infants.
more thoughtful formula, and it's the worst possibly for those more sensitive children.
Well, it's marketed under the pretense of babies having lactose intolerance.
Mm.
But the research does not support the concept of babies having lactose intolerance. But even if your baby did have lactose intolerance, why would you replace lactose with corn syrup?
Right.
I wouldn't. If I had lactose intolerance, you can buy milk that's been treated to make it suitable for someone who is lactose intolerant.
Right. Which they have now.
But there's no formula that does that. What the formula companies say, oh, we're just going to use corn syrup instead because it doesn't have lactose in it.
Yeah, I think this is a prime opportunity for innovation, for regulation, for accountability. I think parents are starting to demand new options, and that it's actually a national emergency that we're able to feed our babies and keep them healthy and not be spiking them and them needing to have glucose monitors that are buzzing. It's so sad to me because we're seeing in utero pregnancy is getting less healthy, then we're seeing babies being born less healthy, and then we're like addicting them to these corn syrup solids and these sugars, and I know babies should have 0 added or free sugar under 2, and it's probably longer than that, but at least they just came out and said that under 2. So then it's creating this dependency and this, I'll go ahead and say it, addiction to sugar that is then harming the development and functioning of our children. So I don't know, how does it make you feel? I've been working in this for 35 years and been one of the researchers ringing the bell. So for me, it's like so sad and it's so upsetting, but I'm curious how you feel about it.
Very frustrated because there's very simple changes that can be made to fix that. And even there's a lot of opposition to it. I mean, that may change. I don't know. Hopefully it will change in the new administration. There seems to be more openness, at least. I mean, if we banned red dye, which kids should not be consuming, I would say kids shouldn't.
We banned one of them. We banned we banned in California. We banned a bunch, and then the FDA last year banned red number 3, but we have more red, like red number 40, which
exactly.
Tylenol.
Well, we need to work on corn syrup in the same way. So there's a lot of unfortunate loopholes whereby formula companies can get away with this. One of which is that the formula is very closely regulated. There's very clear guidelines on what needs to be in formula, but the guideline for carbohydrate just gives an amount of carbohydrate. It says nothing about what type of carbohydrate. So what moms have to do is just look at the ingredient list, because also formula is exempt from having to identify added sugars, which are on most food products, but not formula.
That is a terrible loophole.
Yeah. So what you have to do is just look at the ingredient list, and lactose should be the first ingredient. Or if it's not, it'll be corn. And if it's corn, you should try not to use that formula.
Okay. So formula, look to make sure that there's lactose listed, make sure that there's not high fructose corn syrup or solid.
It's not even high fructose corn syrup. Formula is not using high fructose corn syrup. That's a different problem in sodas. Right. It's actual corn syrup.
Solid. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you shared that, and then you shared earlier that parents should steer clear of sugary beverages, including free sugars like juices. So sodas or pop, because I'm from Minnesota, and juices. What's another kind of tip that you have for parents that want to sugar-proof their families?
Yeah, so in terms of the sugary beverages, or liquid sugar as I call it, the big thing you can do here is just not bring it into the house.
Yeah.
Because you do have control over what's in your house and in your pantry and in your fridge. Kids will have plenty of opportunities to get access to that outside of the house. We need to work with schools as well, as you were doing.
Of like every birthday party, it's like just
it's everywhere. So birthday parties, peer pressure, out with their friends. You can't really control all of that, but you can control it in what you bring into the house. And if juice is there, or your kids really can't seem to live without it, just dilute it a little bit. Just add a little bit of water, because it's also about the concentration of sugar that's coming into the body.
Have you been analyzing the order of things too, like having the kids have protein and then really having the juice afterwards or the dessert afterwards to help slow the absorption?
We haven't done those studies ourselves. I've done those studies on myself.
Right. So I'm still going to see it as an adult.
Yeah, but we haven't done as much of that in children as we should have. I think that's
limit it whenever you can. Just don't bring it in the house whenever possible.
Yeah, I mean that's a simple, easy tip, and the opposite of that is just keep bottles of water handy, so that when your kids come home from school or from soccer practice and they need a drink, they just reach for the water.
Yeah. So, we work with over 500 schools. It's going to be 1,000 schools this year around the country, helping them reduce sugar. One of our schools just removed 34 pounds of sugar per student per year, and kids eat a bathtub of
Amazing.
sugar. It's really amazing. And sugar is one of the pieces that we look at. We look at helping schools move from an ultra processed food environment to a real food environment, adding in more local, etc. And one of the really exciting ways that one of our schools made change, and it's about making change without compromise. It's about helping the kids feel nourished and supported and able to focus and enjoying the food and knowing that it's delicious, and also having it be healthier. One of the things that a lot of our schools have been doing, and they've been copying each other, is spa water, which I love that. And I've even been doing that with my kids a little bit, of like, whether that's having them squeeze the lemon and just the lemon,
Mm-hmm.
or infusing it and having a water pitcher that then also has blueberries in it, or something that just adds a little bit of flavor and fun.
Sure. Yeah.
So I love the idea of like a spa water hack, because our schools are doing it and it's really cool. It's a whole vibe in the cafeteria, and parents can do it at home too. And it's a way you can get kids involved, right? Like, the more we can get kids feeling like little chefs and ownership over what they're eating and learning and why it's important, the better. So I think that's a fun way to not make it juice. You're not squeezing those blueberries, but just like adding them in and adding some color and some flavor and letting it sit. So that's like one of my favorite new hacks that I've been trying with my littles, and it's been really fun.
Yeah, that's great.
And just having them drink more water in general, right? Just so that they're not only hydrated, but they're not then reaching for those other types of beverages. So I want to I could talk to you about this all day. I'm like so fascinated by your research and what you have coming out, especially around sugar and test scores. I think it's going to be really exciting. So we'll have to have a second conversation as soon as that important
Sure.
research is
Yeah.
out. One thing that I wanted to talk about was just I'm like, there are a few different directions that I could go, but I want to just talk a little bit about you for a second. I want to know, like, what are your go-tos? What are you eating this week?
Ooh. Yeah. Okay. Well, yeah, actually I'm doing a lot of the cooking these days because my it's just me and my wife now. Our kids have left. They're in school now, and it's changed the way we eat.
Mm-hmm.
Because we're not trying to keep everybody happy. So
Right.
it's kind of fun. And also my wife is she's an film editor and works much longer hours and is on a deadline. So I'm like chief chef these
Love it.
days. Yeah, so it's fun. Let me see. Well, one thing we did was we subscribed to a fish delivery box. So we get fresh fish in a box from Alaska once a month,
Cool.
which is great. So that's always in the freezer. So once or twice a week, I'll make some kind of fish dish. Whether that's just could be a simple pan fried halibut the other night with I made a little sauce with grapefruit and some herbs I think was in there. And just vegetables. I cook a lot of vegetables. I got a lot of points from my wife the last week or two because I would just like buy great winter vegetables like leeks and cabbage and fennel and just like slowly pan fry them so they kind of caramelize a little bit. I did that last night. I just chopped up some fennel, some leeks, and some potatoes and kind of pan fried it slowly with some butter. And that's what we had for dinner. It was amazing.
Also, do you batch cook? Like, do you make enough so that then she can also take that for lunch the next day, or that then, because that's been working around our house. We'll make a little bit extra, and then it's like we have it the next day too. And I've been loving that. And then I
Yeah,
make that protein-rich chicken. Like last night, we had chicken and vegetables, similar, not fish. I want to be ordering more fish. And then this morning for breakfast, I had chicken and vegetables, and it was delicious. And it was a great protein and fiber-rich way to start my day. So, have you been doing that at all? I know that's a great hack for families to bulk batch cook.
yeah, most of the time, not always. Didn't happen last night. Last
It was a
week,
special, Michael special.
well, it was just like one of those days, like, what are we going to have for dinner? Usually we're a bit more organized and I
Yeah.
like to come up with a plan.
Yeah.
My wife's better at planning, so if she can just like, because deciding what to cook is the hardest part for me. I'm a good implementer. If I know what I'm supposed to cook, I'll just
Yeah.
cook it. But last night I was like, oh gosh, what are we gonna
Yeah.
have? So I just, I just been shopping and I bought some nice veggies and that's what I did. But usually, yeah, the last week I made soup, I think a couple of nights. I started making my own veggie broth and saving all my cut up bits of vegetables to make a broth.
I'm getting really into it. I love it.
Yeah, so I made fresh veggie broth last week and then made a very simple Italian wedding soup.
Yeah.
Um, and I used to make meatballs, but what I found, because I found an easy trick of that is just to buy sausages and just open them up and like just
Oh,
drop some of the sausage into the broth.
oh yeah.
It's
Oh,
kind of really cool. And my wife said, "No, you don't even have to roll them up. Just like pinch them and just
yeah.
like drop them in, so it's like real rustic."
This is making me so, yeah, this is making me so, like a true stew. Like, this is making me so hungry.
Yeah. So
Um,
there's a lot of that. Do a good roast chicken. Um, we
about
don't
40%
eat.
of food is wasted in our country too, which I think is like
Yeah.
the stupidest problem because like I really believe that our food waste problem could help solve our nutrition insecurity problem. And so when you talk about these kind of search and rescue meals where you're finding what's left and you're pulling this and you're using all the parts of the vegetables and then turning it into a soup, I love that because it's reducing food waste and it's creating nourishment for the family.
Yeah, I'm on a kick to reduce food waste. It was a tough change when it was just the two of us because we're used to just like buying a ton of food
Right.
and making sure we had a lot of food here. Now I'm just trying to buy for what we need,
Yeah.
and if I need to supplement it during the week, then I can do that.
Okay. When Mr. Sugarproof wants a treat, what are your top treats that you reach for?
Yeah, so just it's a bit of a myth that Mr. Sugarproof doesn't like sugary treats because he does. And people like see me coming and they're like, "Oh, hide the cookies." But the truth is, I do like that. So recently, well, actually, just this week, I made like a fruit loaf because I
Is
love a good fruit loaf.
that a Scottish
Uh,
tradition? I'm a little bit
not,
Scottish. Is that what it
not, maybe it's more British.
is? Okay. Okay. Yeah.
It's I've used a recipe from Jamie Oliver. This one was from
Oh,
Nigel
cool.
Slater. And it's pretty simple, but I mean, and anytime I do that, also, I mean, I'm cutting the sugar out. So that's the other big tip I'll say is that whenever I do bake, normally reduce what the recipe calls for by about a quarter or a third. So that's what I did with the sugar loaf.
That's a great.
And
Just make it.
last week I made an upside down um, olive oil apple cake.
Mm.
So usually it's incorporating fruit in some way with less sugar than what the recipe calls for.
Yeah, we do an apple galette. We is too like we my kids actually with their grandparents with their abuelitos make an apple galette, and so they just it's
Love,
very low
yeah,
sugar. It's open. It's tons of apples. They get chopping. They actually get the apples from our neighbor's tree, and we do a swap, and we
nice.
bring her a little, and so like it makes it so much fun, and it really builds their kitchen confidence. I think so. I love those kind of like those treats that can be. It's about the process, and you're enjoying it, and it's meditative to actually make it, and it's educational for the kids, and it's a treat, but it's not like sugar blasting them.
Yeah, I love that. I love the rustic nature of the galette, and it's just so easy. And I mean, and really, I think that's so important. I mean, my message overall is more kind of holistic that rather than kind of give you a prescription of
Yeah.
what I think you all should eat, is just to kind of make the eating process more enjoyable and more family oriented.
More involved. Yeah. I
Yeah.
love I love that.
Because my kids might not have grown, my kids might not have eaten perfectly when they were kids growing up in our house, and often kind of wondered why I was so weird and crazy and
Yeah.
stuff like that.
thanked you yet? They will soon. Have they thanked you yet?
No,
Like,
they do know. That's what I'm about to say. I think the reward often comes later, and I'm very gratified by that. So you might not get the immediate gratification from your kids in this. You might get some weird looks and why are we doing this and why are we weird?
yeah,
But I'm so gratified. My kids are now both in college, and both of them are like really focused on what they're eating and making sure it's healthy and good for their bodies.
that's awesome. That's awesome. So they have said, "Dad, thank you." They're
They
like,
do, they do. It's delayed, so be prepared for the delayed gratification on this.
got it. We'll get the eye rolling and whatnot.
Yeah, yeah,
I
you're gonna get it.
no to things that have food dye in them, and she's like won't eat things that are too sugary. So my little guy, so they're. I think we're empowering them to be aware, and it may seem
Sure.
a little strange or why when I put stickers in the pinata versus candy in the pinata, I definitely got some pushback, but. At the end of the day, the kids like the stickers too, so that worked, and it was still a fun party. So, and she
Great.
still had chocolate cake. So, but how do you find balance and moderation, and how do you focus on celebration food versus 70% of your kids' calories being from sugary.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a fine line there. I think, Sugarproof is not about avoiding all sugars and taking it
Right.
away. I think there's an important element of culture and enjoyment of
Yeah,
food and celebration that needs to still stay there.
absolutely. Okay, two other quick questions. What are you reading right now?
For fun,
Yeah.
I'm reading Orbital. I'm almost done.
Pitch it
Which one? Sorry?
pitch it to me.
Orbital won the Booker Prize last year. It's a very small book. It's written from the voice of astronauts aboard a space station that's orbiting Earth, and it's really a cool perspective of these people living in space, looking down on Earth, and going around the Earth like 12 times a day or whatever. And it's a really cool perspective.
Yeah. The
Uh,
astronauts that I know, nobody loves Earth more than them because they go out into space and they miss the oxygen and the food. Like
yeah,
the dehydrated food up in space, like not all the rave. So yeah, I'm told. So okay,
and
I'm
then
interested. I'll have to pick it up.
then next on the list is I have two books next on the list. One is How to Do Nothing,
Mm.
which
You good?
I forget the name of the author, but it was quite a popular book that was
Okay.
quite successful.
I feel like that's not your forte. Like I feel like you are always up to something, which I love about you. But okay, how
Well,
did you?
I don't know because I think you have to do nothing for a while to get inspired. I
So,
think that's kind of the basic concept of that
yeah,
is that we don't always have to be like doing
yeah.
something, doing
No, I
something,
love
that we need to have downtime.
that. Okay, and was there one more that you said was coming up?
The new Nigel Slater book. I love Nigel Slater. I love his philosophy on cooking and eating. And I don't know if you're familiar with his work, but he's a British author, uh, recipe developer, chef,
Okay.
and he writes a lot about just everyday kitchen objects and how valuable they are relative to what he's cooking or growing or eating that day.
Cool. Okay, I'm gonna check him out on Instagram to start, and then
I love his Instagram. His Instagram's fantastic.
cool, fun. That was so fun. Okay, and what are you watching? Are you watching anything right now? Movie, documentary, TV show?
Um, well, we just went through a round of watching a bunch of movies, catching up with all the holiday movies that came out. What did we watch most recently? Well, we're watching Severance just because
Okay,
it's
I haven't seen it.
hmm?
I haven't seen it.
Yeah, it's on Apple.
Okay.
It's kind of mind blowing and confusing, and you don't know what's going on half the time.
Okay.
Movie wise, um, the movies I've watched that I've enjoyed most recently were September 5th, I'm Still Here, and the Bob Dylan film.
Mm, okay.
Um, I
Giving
wanted to
me a
say,
list. I love this.
Huh?
You're giving
Yeah.
me a list. I'm behind. I love it. I
For
need to.
different reasons. So I'm Still Here is a beautiful Brazilian film, but it's set in Brazil in the 1970s when there was crackdown against the communists and people were disappearing, and it's very scaringly time appropriate.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the Bob Dylan film is just fun because I love his music, and I thought Timothy Chalamet was excellent.
Yeah. Okay. On it. I wrote them down. Thank you. I love it. That's quite the list. Well, wonderful. I just am so thankful personally. You've changed my life, my family's life. You've improved my health and my family's health.
Oh,
And
thank you.
you're
How old are your kids, by the way?
my little guy's about to turn 4 and my daughter's 6. So
Oh,
I have
wow.
a kindergartner and a preschooler. And I love this age. It's so much fun. And it's so fun to watch them fall in love with food and to be curious about this work and whatnot. So, and my daughter's asking me about her school food, when we can make
Yeah,
change.
that must be interesting. How do you deal with that?
Yeah, well, yeah. Right now, my husband and my father-in-law make the most beautiful, colorful lunches with tons of veggies and protein and
Oh,
nuts and things. And so that's how we deal with it right now. There's like a whole family effort and team effort on it, and it's a lot of work. And then hopefully, between legislation that's happening at the national and state level, and then with the work that Eat Real does, that we can help to make their school and every school healthier. And so also, thank you for your guidance. I know you're on Eat Real's new upcoming medical advisory board, and you're helping us improve our standards and think about how do we do more research and launch really thoughtfully and really effectively to help change the nutrition trajectory for kids. So, just super grateful for this conversation.
yeah.
For your
I'm so
leadership.
excited to be part of that. I think the work that you're doing is so important and making a big impact. And I want to be able to help you achieve all those goals.
Thank you. We're going for it. 20 states, a million kids. We can do it this year. So it's a big year. But thank you so much for
Amazing.
taking the time.
My pleasure. Yeah, that's very fun to talk with you.